Cutting the clock early. Oh, I gotta reset the goddamn capture. That's tiff. Alright. We are 6 picks away currently in a draft. I'm gonna have to really adjust this. Alright. We will embrace this. Minimize the music. We'll get this up. Pick 10. No immediate leaning. I'm fine with Nico or Amin-Ra. As I adjust this. Alright. Should work perfect. Wish I knew why OBS does that sometimes. But I don't have an answer, and I don't expect you to either. Alright. Pick 10. Honestly, I've been getting so much of the late rounds of drafts. Not that I hate it, but I would like a little bit of variety. Come on, give me something. This is a Husky today. Gonna try and max it out. I usually like the smaller contests. You don't have to get too game stacked up to really get something nice going. So I appreciate that aspect of it. Between Nico and Amin-Ra. Knowing that I can go McConkey at the back-to-back, we'll just go Nico. And then plan for McConkey at the next pick. More than happy with that. Alright. Hope everybody's Friday is going fantastic. Got in a nice little workout before I hopped on here. Feeling good. Feeling juicy. I mean, if you're going to give me Amin-Ra at 15, I will do that. And I won't be afraid to do it by any means. 34-39. At our next picks. Let me get some semblance of a plan here. Alright, Amin-Ra. Take that to the bank. It's an easy pick for me. Okay. We're likely going to pass on Reishi. I've been getting a fair amount of him. In a smaller contest, the ceiling of a lower suspension. I mean, I love Rice in general, but I don't think at either of these picks. At this point, while we still don't have any info, I am starting to push where I'm going to take him further back. Early 40s I'm still more than happy with. Don't think I'm going to take him at like 39, at least with this specific team. But I do love the KC offense this year. I think people kind of underrate the going Reishi worthy for a little Mahomes stack. I think that can work out pretty well, especially with how the Denver offense has improved. That can be a surprising Week 17 play. Let's see here. We're really not going to get... I mean, Hampton could be there. It's not the worst decision. Get an immediate mini for Houston, LA. Couldn't be bad. I admittedly am a little undervalued on Hampton. I worry about Greg Roman's offense limiting the number of passes that he can catch, despite the fact that he is a very good pass-catching running back. And, of course, the factor that we've seen with the Ravens for years, which is that Roman likes to work in some other backs. Admittedly, if it was any other offensive coordinator, I'd probably be all over Hampton. But those are two slight, they're not insane concerns you should worry about, but things that you should know. Happy to take him at the next pick, though, if he's there. For what we would do with the 39 pick, it's kind of a good question. I do love Kyron. I think the volume for his current AP is very nice. I personally don't buy too much into Quez Hunter. We'll line up some of this Minnesota for later. Same thing with LA, so we can have them in the back of our minds for later. People really overreacting to the Hall of Fame game last night, eh? Lambert Smith moving up past the 215 fall off. 6 picks away. O'Marion should be a safe quality pick. The next one if he's there. If not, we should get some ADP value out of the people ahead of him. How do we line up? I do love Lamar a fair bit this year. We don't line up super well for getting any Green Bay bring back, though, for his 17 game, admittedly. So I would prefer just to get a quality pick at Hampton. Looks like that's not going to happen, though. I can go JSN. It's not the worst decision I've ever had. Just go JSN into Tet. Get an immediate stack. 2 wide receivers that should command a fair bit of target share. Seattle offense should be better than expected. I admittedly, I have like 0 Garrett Wilson either, so I could take him here. We'll take whoever. Oh, I mean, if you're going to give me Marv, I'm not going to cry about that. I was going to say whoever's there out of Wilson or Harrison would be the one I'm going to take. I'm a big Marv fan. I do think a little bit, like, I don't expect the targets to vastly increase, but I do think the offense itself could get more efficient. We'll see. Either way, should be some semblance of a year or two jump out of him. I'm still fairly confident in him, both in Dynasty and redraft formats. Ignoring the stacking for now, but I'm going to take Kyron. Like him as a player, slight ADP value. More than happy to do that. I did do a fair bit of research last 2 nights looking at, while this isn't the BBM, looking at previous BBM winners just to see how game or team stacked they were. Admittedly, it was kind of like 50-50. 2 of the winners, I don't remember the specific contest, whether it was 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. 2 of the winners were fairly, like, pretty stacked up, both in terms of, like, I think it was Cincinnati the 1 year, and then I can't remember what the other team was. The other team was less team stacked and heavily game stacked into each other. And then the other 2 that I saw were kind of a mixed bag. I mean, there were some minis in there, but for the most part, like, a big aspect of it was just, you know, the luck that comes with BBM and hitting on some of their later round picks. Like, it was Amon-Ra against Rashad Penny. Like, both late picks because it was Amon-Ra's rookie year and Rashad Penny wasn't supposed to be put into a feature role. So both very late picks happened to play each other, but I don't think in any universe was the guy who was one expecting that both Rashad Penny would be playing 17 and Amon-Ra would be the hit that he was as a rookie, and it created a firestorm for him. So something admittedly I have to think about. I go heavy on team and game stacking. I can sometimes just take the value, especially on players that I like. That was the other thing in terms of ADP. I do sometimes, admittedly not all the time, so it's not the game stacking bring back is a bigger issue for me. I do tend to be a reacher. I like reaching for unique lineups. Basically, I did not realize how sharp public ADP usually is. Essentially, any reach, small, slight, large, is negative EV. Any reach past 12 picks, which admittedly you should never be doing, but I have done once, even in this Husky contest, to get A.J. Brown, Hurts, and Devonta Smith. Any reach past 12 is just, like, very bad almost all of the time. So I do think you need to, while the unique factor does heavily entice me at times, I need to be better about being smarter when it comes to those reaches and definitely not going crazy just to try and prove a point, which I do sometimes. We could play further into Arizona here with Connor. I don't think I'm going to do that. Hubbard goes We can likely get Addison at the next pick. We'll just play into Arizona. I'm fine with that. Connor's another bat. Well, I do have that issue. All right, that's fine. Just take Addison. We know we want him. The rest of the board, I'm fairly content on. You see me, though, there, reach. I don't want to take... I mean, I could take 2 backs on fucking bye week 8. It's not the worst thing, especially if Connor's there at 63. If not, though, I do like Swift a fair bit. I need to keep myself... All right, we'll deal with it. We'll find some handcuffs to hopefully bring some value out of week 8. Order didn't necessarily matter there too much. But, I mean, you see this. Even this, which to me didn't feel like that crazy of a reach. Admittedly, a reach, I know. 10 spots on Addison is usually going to be, like, a pretty bad decision. The only slight reason you give yourself in this case is that while public is usually right on talent, points, all that stuff, it's sharp. You could make the argument that they aren't as sharp on, what suspensions will be, how quickly people get back from injury. I think those are probably the plays to leverage. In my opinion, injury I'm always going to be later than most of the public. I think the public gets too excited thinking about best case scenarios when it comes to injuries rather than thinking about the most likely outcome. With suspensions, I tend to be a little bit more positive than the public. I think a lot of people tend to get scared off by the lack of information surrounding most of the suspensions that have yet to be handed out this year. And I'm usually one to buy into that, that info scarcity. Fair bit of running back still on the board. Now Mixon, admittedly, I think it's partially just because of the the info dump here. Granted, I just said I'm usually lower on injured players than the public. When Mixon falls to like 90, I've been pretty all over that. Like I think even if Mixon doesn't play till like week 2, 3. The value at 90 is fantastic. In this smaller contest, people have definitely been scared off a lot more than they would be in like BBM, just because people, I think, obviously know in BBM that you need to play for ceiling, so they kind of just eat the cost on Mixon. In this smaller contest, people have been fairly scared off. Very surprised to be Swift fallen so far. $82-87. We'll definitely come away with a Minnesota back here to mini into Amon-Ra. In terms of quarterback, probably can go Kyler. It'd be a slight reach. What can we play into instead? I mean, I love Stroud. It's probably the easiest one to do. So we'll probably pass on Kyler at this second of 2 upcoming picks. I'd be very happy with Pacheco. Just kind of go 2 RBs, be fairly set, and then work in some later Houston wide receivers, Arizona stuff. It's pretty fair to me. Atlanta as well. It's usually an easy target later in drafts for me. Pacheco goes. I mean, we could get a pretty fierce Minnesota stack here and then work into McCarthy later. It's probably the play. I'm going to let the world decide for me here which Minnesota running back I get. And we'll lock in Hawk, knowing that we'll get McCarthy at what pick. May have to reach on him slightly at 111. Especially if we get Aaron Jones, I think the reach on McCarthy. 10 picks though is hard. I do it after how many times I've been burnt at quarterback. A lot more so in some of the earlier streams than the recent ones. But I do think it makes sense. But I did have to come to terms with that it is a 9 times out of 10 negative EV decision there. All right, guaranteed one of the Minnesota backs. This is the start of like early 90s is when I'm all over mixing. Here, especially with this roster construction, I'm going to prefer Aaron Jones. But there's definitely value in mixing at the start of this range. All right, so we'll likely have to take McCarthy at 111. I could risk it. 8 picks is a lot, though, especially a quarterback and one that people think can run. I think he can scoot, but it's like a Drake May level of scoot. You know, like it'll be some small level value. It's not going to change the world. I think people think a lot more of J.J. McCarthy's scooting than it really is. Obviously, I mean, if by some grace of God, Kyler's there, we'll take him. If Mixon is still there, I will definitely take him. Let's see, who else would we be targeting at, what is it, 108? 106. This is tough. I don't think we want to go Goff, especially with how I want to draft Stroud and then work into some of the later Houston wide receivers, and he lines up fairly well with our picks at 130. So I think Stroud is definitely the play. We'll have to see if anyone falls. Admittedly, I don't love a lot of the players in this range. I do like the quarterbacks, especially when you have them stacked up. I like Dak. I like Caleb. I do like Drake May a fair bit, but I'm very underexposed on Drake May right now, to be honest. I like Burden, but I don't see it too well in this lineup. Probably just have to hunt some value at the first pick and then take a small reach on McCarthy. If Harris is there, we're happy with that. If any of these like top players fall, top 4 excluding Knicks, so ETN, Ayuk, Coleman, Harris, I'd be fine with it. Don't expect it though. Like, I'm not really gonna buy into Rashid Shaheed, especially without like a Tennessee bringback. I don't really see a ton of ADP value in that. There is some ceiling, but it's like a risk-reward ratio I'm not super bought into. I don't expect Shah to be that great of a quarterback, admittedly. I still like Olave a fair bit just because the volume I think he can achieve, but for like a deep threat burner like Shaheed, it's kind of hard for me to put my trust in Shah. All right, I mean, we'll take ETN or Ayuk at this pick and then reach on McCarthy to get into our triple now with Jones, Addison, Hawkinson. We'll go Ayuk. We already are fairly put into bye week 8 at running back. Hand up, it is our advance rate is suffering, having both Addison and Ayuk. There are some later wide receivers that I honestly take a fair bit. Jalen McMillan I've drafted a lot, just because I think he could maintain a fair share of value even past the return of Chris Godwin, just working in from time to time, being a very high ceiling week-to-week TD threat. But the other one that I like a lot that people don't really ever draft is Demarcus Robinson, especially after taking Ayuk. Yeah, I don't want to risk it till 130 on McCarthy, especially knowing that we want Stroud at that 130 pick. I think we just got to eat this. We're stacked up into it. It makes sense. But 11 picks is fairly tough there. Demarcus Robinson is another, like, similar to McMillan. There is a slight chance, especially now that blanking on his name. Juwan Jennings is hurt now, so there's definitely a lot of early season upside without Jennings, without Ayuk, for Robinson to provide some value. And then later into the season, if there is like a 1 week absence, you still could get some fairly good TD upside out of him. He showed it last year with the Rams that he still got a little bit of juice, can step up when needed. Especially when you can take him at your last pick, I like it a fair bit after taking Ayuk. What I really like, though, is Pearsall, especially now with Juwan a little bit on the mend. But I like Robinson even if you're like really stacked up into Chicago and missed on all the San Fran. He's a player I think gives you a fair amount of 17 upside if any of their receivers happen to miss that week. And you hopefully advance to 17 in something like BBM. $130 will be CJ Stroud. We'll get our two quarterbacks fairly set. $135. What are we looking at? Najee wouldn't be the worst. I do prefer Ray Davis to him. We will be stacked up into Houston, though, which moves Najee back up. I do need to queue up the later Houston wide receivers to play into our plan with Stroud here. I have no idea what the timetable is for Dell. There's no timetable, so there you go. Answer the question for you. All right. And then where is Schultz? I like Schultz a fair bit with how up in the air Houston's wide receiver room is. I think there's admittedly more early season than late season, but I think there's a fair bit of value for him. And even if he doesn't capitalize on that, I think his role is very safe. He's an 85 target tight end. Admittedly some low tight end upside, but if you get any positive impact there in the TD department, he can be a nice, tiny ADP jump for you in the tight end room. Judkins in this smaller contest is much harder for me to swallow. I'm definitely taking Stroud here either way, just so I walk away with the quarterback I want. Tiff, I did not realize that. That's tough for me. It's fine. We'll just take a third quarterback and eat it. I'm not going to let the bye weeks scare me off of a decent stack. Who could we take later to play into it? I'll wait after this pick, and then I'll show you what I tend to like doing whenever I am caught into these bye week fiascos. I'm going to go Javonte here, I think. Yeah. I know. Najee plays into Houston. I just committed to Houston. But Javonte to me is the only one of these backs, unless James Cook sits out, which he's not going to do, that can be the 1A in the room. Admittedly, Jadon Blue has been getting a lot of positive reports out of camp. So I do like taking him a fair bit, especially when you're in this early part of the offseason where a lot of things can change. I'm a big fan of taking the backups, the handcuffs, the young rookie upstarts. It's usually my MO. But I do like Javonte Williams a fair bit. He can pass block well, he catches well. If we see that, he really just needed a lot more time to get back from the injury, he could be a pretty good ADP hit. And it's also, you have to temper a lot of the positive reports with rookies. What the beat reporter writes positively about does not necessarily mean that it'll chalk up the same way in fantasy. We need week 6. So little peek behind the curtain here. This is what I do. I'm going to look up week 6 in the NFL, knowing that this third quarterback, their primary value is going to be that bye week fill-in, maybe occasionally hitting on some other value. But like Bryce Young having to play a shootout against the Cowboys could work well, especially if Micah Parsons doesn't play for him this season. That works well. You could take Russ against the Eagles. The Eagles' defense is fairly good. I don't love that. Seahawks, Jags could be fine taking someone like Darnold. Titans, Raiders, same thing. You basically just want to be on the lookout. Like if the Raiders were playing the Eagles or the 49ers, something like that, I'd be like, all right, definitely not doing good old Geno. But week 6, we do have a fair number of options. Steelers, Browns could work okay. And Rodgers you can get away with much later in the draft. I do think Darnold's probably better, but we don't have any Seattle for him to work into. We will take Najee at this next pick. Close out running back more likely than not. And then we can focus on just getting some supplemental depth the rest of the way. If not Najee, Algiers fine. Plays into Kyron well. But I'll just take Najee. Plays into our bigger stack. I still like him as a player. If you're going to let me get him at 54, just because of a simple eye injury, I'm going to do it. Do I reach on McMillan? Not really any wide receiver value here. I mean, we could take Cam Ward. No, we'll go Stafford. We have Kyron for him. And I also like Stafford a fair bit. I think he's decently undervalued, so I'm fine with that. Close out of that window. Get this back up. It does open up Tutu Atwell later, who I do like. All right. 3, 5, 5, 1. Depending on who our second tight end is, will kind of change my opinion of whether we go 2 or 3 tight end. We're at 78, 83, and then the 202 range. Gesicki fine for the Cincinnati stacks. We'll almost assuredly take Knoll. If we get Gesicki, I'll be happy about sitting at 2 tight ends. If we don't... I don't love any of the LA tight ends. Ferguson, I think, is a slight bit overvalued. But, like, Higbee isn't really much of a stud at this point of his career. I think they kind of split out to what could be a painful tight end room to buy into. Admittedly, in, like, BBM, Ferguson's much better, especially in a 3 tight end team. He does offer late season upside from winning over the room and seeing any sort of positive action in those playoff weeks. Yeah, I think we, unless we end up taking Schultz at the other one, but even with Schultz and Hawkinson, I'd feel fairly comfortable. Plays into both of our quarterbacks that we need to perform well. Main quarterbacks, I guess, with Stafford here. I think we're set at the 5 running backs that we have. I feel comfortable there. We just need some early season wide receiver value to sustain us until we get Addison and Ayuk back. Excuse me. Very surprised to see Chubb falling this far. Usually people buy into that pretty hefty. I'm buying more into Woody Marks than Chubb. Hopefully we get Gesicki here. Get some Arizona bring back, which is sweet. Noel going off the board is fairly surprising. Interesting to see. My buddy Holden was talking up Mason Taylor today. I personally don't see it that much. Granted, I will give him this. He is a starter. That's the best I can give you. But I just don't see... I mean, maybe they do, but it's tough for me to see this Jets offense throwing the ball a ton and enough for him to, like, really get an amazing target share. But we'll see. I could be wrong. I haven't finished up my target expectations yet. When I do, I will share the sheet. Probably put it in all the stream and video links if anyone wants to check it out. But for now, it is unfinished. I do need to do another pass through. The sheet is set up for me to start doing all the calculations, look back over the past year's performance, passing attempt-wise. Let me lock in a little bit here. I mean, I feel fairly comfortable with these wide receivers. If you can get Adam Thielen this late, I think you just do it. Yes, he's old, but shit. He catches TDs, he's a red area threat. That's the kind of spike that you need in best ball. So I'll buy one more year into Thielen, especially when I can get him 13 picks after ADP. That's usually a good decision. And then we'll close out with Schultz and one of these two wide receivers at our final 2 picks. Do a brief little review here. Started off Nico. Had a, admittedly, conversation with myself, Nico versus Amon-Ra. I like them both a fair bit, and I do probably have higher Amon-Ra right now than Nico. So more than happy to take Nico. Was admittedly planning to go McConkey, get a nice little mini to start, but Amon-Ra fell to 15. I'm going to take that. I think the Detroit offense is still going to be great this year, so no reason to push off of Amon-Ra. I'm very happy to take him, especially in the second. Move in, get an ADP value here on Marv. Just kind of keep doing that. Get a slight mini and another ADP value at a Kyron, and then a slight reach here on Addison to work into the matchup with Amon-Ra. Ended up, because he fell to the next pick, I was considering taking Connor there. Happened to get him at 63 instead, which is more than fine. Team stack a little bit with Arizona. Knew, though, that we likely weren't going to take Kyler because of where his ADP lined up with our picks. So started to think about someone else. That ended up being J.J. McCarthy in the Minnesota offense. Works well, having Amon-Ra with a bring back. And if you believe in KOC, which more often than not you should, I am admittedly a little scared about the reports of like how bad McCarthy is. But I mean, KOC turned every bum and their mom into a meaningful fantasy quarterback that started for him so far. So McCarthy has to be generationally bad to get that out of you. Then got Stroud here. Had a safe play with Nico. Admittedly does create a slight bye week problem with these two being on the same bye week, but we were able to get Stafford later to fill in for that role. 3 quarterbacks. I admittedly can start doing it more, especially a lot of value when your first quarterback does come in round 10. You don't have to shy away from taking a third quarterback even when you are fairly stacked into someone like McCarthy and had intentions to take someone like, where's he at? Jalen Noel later to stack a little bit more into Houston. Don't be afraid to take a third quarterback if it makes sense. Javonte Williams, ADP value. I liked him more than Najee. Ended up getting Najee at 154. Don't be scared off too much about the eye thing. Admittedly, it's bad that he isn't practicing yet. But I think Greg Roman likes to cycle through running backs. Najee should get some value here and there on a couple of small, very scarce, admittedly, spike weeks. But in an offense that's going to want to run the ball, I think taking a Greg Roman second back is never a bad decision. Forgot that we did take Gesicki, so we don't really need to take Schultz there. I think we will take Atwell. I like his season-long target potential. Obviously, if you see any sort of injury to the LA roster, he gets a nice little bump up. He's, I think, going to get the role over Jordan Whittington. I also think Tutu kind of gives them something that they don't really have right now in this offense, which is kind of a burner, a nice deep threat. And while I don't like taking those kind of players in my home league, in best ball, that's usually something to target, especially this late. So I do think there's a fair bit of upside for Tutu this year. At 7 wide receiver, and with the value on Thielen, we likely can go Schultz. Stuff I was looking into yesterday basically said, like, while it is slight, technically 3 tight ends has been the most optimal route. It is a decent question. If we were more stacked up into San Francisco or more stacked up into Chicago to justify it week 17, I'd probably go Robinson, especially after taking Ayuk. You get a little bit of early season value out of Robinson, maybe a spike 17 if you're playing into Chicago or San Fran higher. But given the fact that we have Stroud, we have a little bit of LA with Harris, but it's more so just the team factor with Stroud and kind of the up-in-the-air wide receiver room in Houston. Kind of fine getting some more value in the tight end room. Yeah, I'm more than happy with that. I do get in the habit of going 2 tight end, 2 quarterback a fair bit, so I'm more than happy to take this 3-3 route here, especially with the value we're able to get fairly late at running back. To close out the recap on the draft, though, ended up getting Najee at a good value. Took Stafford. I like Stafford a fair bit. I think he's undervalued. And we have Kyron to slightly justify it a little bit. Got a little bit more justification by taking Tutu later. Gesicki to play into the Arizona double we have right now with Marv and Connor. Thielen, just because he's got value. If there's any receiver in this range that's going to have a fair bit of TD upside, it's Thielen working in the red area. And as I just said, closed it out with a little bit of stacking there. That's it for today's draft. Gonna finish up my maxing out on the Husky over these next 2 days. Tomorrow will more likely than not be a recorded video. Sunday's still up in the air. It honestly depends on whether I draft the Husky tonight later or not. But be on the lookout for those 2 next. We'll max out this Husky and get on our way. Most likely back to the sprint, maybe a couple BBMs here and there. But that's it for me. Appreciate you coming out. Have a great day. Peace!